Eric, it is so great to meet you. I remember meeting you for the first time Under the Dome.
Oh, okay.
I was
You gave
actually
me.
Kylie's stand-in, and I was like, we were in the high school, and I was like, oh my God, that's Eric La Salle. But I couldn't ask for your autograph because try to act like you've been here before. But it was so great to be under your direction that day. So yeah, I just wanted to get that out the way.
Yes, thanks for bringing me back. Yes.
You're very welcome. Well, I want to take you back kind of even further today. We have a lot to cover, and On Call is so amazing. But I kind of wanted to start off with Juilliard. When I was reading your story and, thinking about what to talk to you about, something that stood out was the connection with Miles Davis for me and how he left Juilliard, saying he wanted real experience and he wanted to be around his people more. And when you were at Juilliard, that was one of your things, two blacks per class. You were talking about the lack of diversity at Juilliard and you went to NYU. Can you just talk a little bit about how that shift in your education shaped your ability to tell stories? And in what ways did experience diverse life stories influence your approach to both acting and directing?
That's a great question. I think first and foremost, I do think that Juilliard was an amazing training, and
Mhm.
it's still. I was there for 2 years, and they have this. It's a 4-year program, but after 2 years, they decide whether or not they feel you're right for the program, et cetera. And I was asked to leave after the second year, but I still, like I said, I still use some of they gave me a strong appreciation for language, and it still affects things I do in storytelling. Where they at that time, because I hear that it's changed a lot,
Mhm.
where where I think they ran into a challenge was, an 18-year-old black kid coming in, and it's like we don't value who you are. Now, their mentality was to strip down artists, period, black,
Yeah.
white, green.
Yeah.
But it does take a deeper thing, I think, when you're African American and someone wants to just kind of rob you of, strip all of that stuff
Yeah.
off,
Yeah. Yeah.
not treat it like it's unimportant. So I think that, NYU gave me an opportunity to bring the technique and an appreciation. It was just the opposite. They were like, be you,
Yeah.
be who you are. That's what makes you great. And so I was able to put all of that together. And I do think it affects me and how I deal with actors now, because with young
Mhm.
actors, that's what I tell them. I want you. I need you to stop the acting.
Yeah.
I want to see you now. We'll get into nuances of the character, but
Yeah.
we'll get honestly, as opposed to you coming with this, thing. So yeah, so it was really an interesting journey, and I think both schools ultimately complemented each other in a
Hmm.
cool way, and it was a painful period when I went through, when I was going through it and got kicked out and didn't know what I was going to do. But I had a great mentor who called NYU and said you should see him, and they accepted me as an advanced student, so I didn't miss a beat, and it worked for me. Everybody's
Right.
different. Uh,
Right.
I was in Saudi Arabia about a month and a half ago. Viola Davis and I were in the same group, and
Hmm.
so, she's a Juilliard. And so she and I were talking, and we were at dinner.
Hmm.
It's like Juilliard, Juilliard, you know what I mean? And she was like, "What was your?" I was like, "This is my experience," and
Yes.
but then my best friend Michael Beach, went there, and his experience. So everyone's experience is different.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of seeing actors, you talk a lot too about paying it forward. And, in your role as director, you mentioned how, you being hired on the spot for coming to America, impacts how you engage with actors and also, with Wesley Snipes and you guys cheering each other on and, being there for each other. How do you advocate for Black men in this world? Seeing us in different roles, you talked about, the rarity of seeing doctors and lawyers and things like that. And how do you advocate for Black men in this space, being such a veteran and such a phenomenal actor self? How do you, continue to push forward and pay it forward?
Well, I think this, and this might be a little controversial.
Okay.
First thing I see is how driven are you? How talented are you? How hardworking?
Yeah.
I don't put people down just because what is it? All skin folk ain't kinfolk. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, just
Yeah.
because you show up, if you
Yeah.
show up not prepared, I'm gonna call you out on it. Now, maybe I'm even harder to a degree because I grew up under the mentality of you have to run faster,
Yes.
higher just to be considered equal. So if I
Yes.
see someone of color, if I see a female, I'll pull them aside and gently say, "Hey, sis, you need to
Yeah.
like if you come in and you don't know your lines, so you don't know
Hmm.
that. So that first one. So my support is to pull you aside gently and say, "Hey, you might want to, hey,
Yeah.
bruh, whatever." I do that with crew. There was I just got finished working on something, and there were a couple of there were more African people of color than when I
Hmm.
started in the industry.
Yeah.
So happy to see that. But I pull them aside on both fronts. I pull them aside when I hear like there was an African American in the assistant director department, and his
Hmm.
boss, my first lady, was raving about this guy. And it made me feel, so I pulled him aside and I said, hey,
Hmm.
they love what you're doing. They got their eyes because you want to encourage
You
them.
do. You do.
And if they're not doing it right, you want to pull them aside and gently say, hey, well, and you try to give. And what I find is the majority of will step up if they haven't been. And I think that that's how we, I don't believe in, oh, like something, oh, you got to go support this movie because it's black. I'm like, is it
Yeah.
a good movie? You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Because
Yeah. Yeah.
sorry, 2 hours is 2 hours of your life. You know what I mean? And so I start with how do we respect the craft? Do we understand the
Yeah.
craft? How can I help you with the craft? Now, if you're willing to learn that, I am ride or die all day long. You know what I mean?
Yes.
People want
Yes.
all day long, but if you want to show up and feel entitled and that's a
Yes.
different.
Yes. Well, we have to talk about on call. You said that having a character disliked is almost a compliment. Talk about a little bit about portraying someone like that and how do you find depth in that role?
Well, I think first of all, we have so many perceptions or preconceptions of characters, and I think that my character in On Call is the personification of that. I think we know who he is, and I think the
Hmm.
Armin thinks she knows who he is, and it's
Hmm.
not until the end of the season you go, oh, that's not we were operating off of what our perception was, not what the
Yes.
facts are, and I think that that's where we are. So it was a really cool character to play.
Yeah.
You think, oh, he's this, and you go, oh no, he's the opposite. You know what I
Yes.
mean? And so I just think that as artists, no matter what you do, if you're a singer, rapper, if you're a ball player, if you're, whatever, actor, direct, anything, whatever you do, be true to it. Don't,
Hmm.
like if I'm going to play a character, my role as an artist is not to judge that character.
Hmm.
Role as an artist is to show as many dimensions of that character, as many complications, as many, that's
Yeah.
my role. And
Yeah.
I like so if people were like, oh, I didn't like what he did. Okay.
Yeah.
Like when we're in the social media era where everything's about likes and
Hmm.
comments, and all of a sudden it's just like, oh, I didn't like the fact that she was wearing that blue, and you're like, so then people start changing, and you're like, no, this is, by the
Yeah.
way, it's quite lovely. So
Thank you.
I'm not just using this as an example, okay?
Yeah, I get
But
it.
that's how people change up.
Hmm.
Oh,
Hmm.
God, I have to start wearing my hair different because three comments said this, three comments. And, I'm old school.
Yeah.
I didn't get into this business with that kind of monitoring. So I do what I do. You decide whether or not you like the character, whether like my art. And if you don't, you don't. Cool.
Yes. Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And if you do, great. Just know I'm showing up every day to be the best version of the art
Hmm.
God made me. That's
Right.
not that not live up to your standards, might whatever. Some people like it, some people
Yeah.
don't. But
Yes.
I love my approach. I love my commitment, and I love my humility towards that because
Yes.
I think it's just the opposite when you're trying to serve. I'm trying to serve the gift that I was blessed with and
Yes.
make that better. Not
Yes.
trying to serve how many likes and
Hmm.
the gram and all of that. That's not
Got it. Being under the direction of Dick Wolf, first of all, there's not a Dick Wolf show that I don't watch that I'm just like injected into my veins. And I was so excited for On Call. I want to kind of like, bring music into this because he has rappers, throughout like his storylines. There's always music involved in Black culture and things like that. If there was anybody, any rapper or any musician that you would like to see on call, that you would like to kind of get their acting chops going, who would that be?
well, see again, I approach it, I think, from a very different perspective. I'm impressed with musicians that do great music. I'm impressed
Hmm.
with rappers that are good rappers. I'm not impressed with because I appreciate you as a rapper that you automatically. What I'm
Yes.
impressed with are the people that really want it. Are the
Mhm.
people so if listen, if someone shows up and they say, I'm multi-talented, I do this, but they're showing me their commitment to the craft of acting.
Mhm. Yes.
That's who I want to work with. So, you know what I mean? So oh wow, they got a great song. I love that song. I want them on the no, I want the person, known or unknown,
Yes.
comes in and says, I take this craft serious. I don't care what I've accomplished. I do different things,
Hmm.
different mediums, different disciplines. Every time I approached a new discipline, I approach it as a student. I approach it as someone who wants to be better. I don't like when I started directing, I didn't come in like, oh, I'm an actor. I'm in this, it's because I started acting when I was on ER. So in
Yeah.
the height of ER,
Yeah.
but I get into directing like, oh, I got this because I'm an actor.
Yeah.
No, I
Right.
had to humble myself and be like, I've got to learn what it means to be a director. When I wanted to be an executive producer, I had to learn what it was to be an executive producer. When I started writing novels, I had to learn what it was to be a novelist and
Hmm.
start in a humble way. That's the person I'm impressed with. That's the
Yeah.
approach, I should say, I'm impressed with. So when people have that type of humility and
Hmm.
respect for craft,
Hmm.
that's who I want to work with.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I truly appreciate your time. I had a million more questions. You are fascinating, and
We'll
thank
have
you
to
so
do
much
another
for your
interview.
art.
Yes, we'll have to do another interview. This was awesome, and
I would love it. Thank you so much, Eric. I really appreciate it.
it was a pleasure.
All right,
Sure.
bye.